Not sure if this fits with the theme here, but here's my story anyways. You be the judge. I think this must have been about a decade or so ago. I grew up in Kempsey, smallish little town about halfway between Coffs and Port, and a little ways inland. There's some really great camping around those parts, with the Mackley River going through there. So me and the lads, we geared up for a weekend out in the scrub. We got there a little bit late, I guess, around 6ish, and we start setting up camp. We busted out the beers by this point, of course. Hey, gotta make up for lost time. We were all laughing and having a pretty good time joking around, as you do. Anyways, one of our group, I'll call him Larry. He's not really getting into the spirit of it, just real quiet. Larry's part Indigenous and he grew up with a big family who were very in touch with their roots. We ribbed him a bit, trying to get him to liven up, but when he still looked sheepish, we asked him what was going on. He wouldn't mention anything specific, just kept on telling us that we should really find a different spot. We probably should have listened to him, but the only two of us with our license were on our P-plates. We'd already been drinking. Plan was to sober up a day before we head back in, so we'd be good to drive. We weren't going to risk it. The evening went on largely uneventfully, although Larry continued to act funny. He'd just go lay in his swag rather than join in with the rest of us. We weren't bothered. If he wasn't into it, we weren't going to let that bugger it up for the rest of us. So we spent the evening dropping a line in, never caught nothing. Drank some more, lit up the fire, drank some more. I guess that overindulgence was why I wasn't too startled at first when I looked over into the scrub and noticed something odd. Not really sure what was going on at first, but it seemed to me like some of the taller shrubs were waving in the breeze in abnormal patterns, if that makes sense. The first thing that seemed off was the fact that there really was no significant breeze to speak of. The second thing that seemed off was just the motions that they were moving in, like they were stuttering back and forth, side to side. It just felt unnatural. We were coming up with all sorts of wild theories about what this could be, trying to make a joke out of it, as usual. One of the lads went to get up and have a closer look, when out of the blue, "Stop." We all froze. The voice, it came from Larry's swag, and he was staring at us with a mix of complete and total seriousness and cold, dead fear. He just looked at us and shook his head. So we all sat back down and just waited. We waited for, I don't know, I guess it was like 10 minutes or so, but it sure felt like a whole lot longer than that. We sat and waited and watched as these shrubs continued to move about. We watched as they began to move further from side to side. We watched as they began to move faster. And we watched as they began to move towards us. I've never felt more terrified than in that single moment, watching as these things started stuttering towards our camp. The way they moved, it was like watching one of those old-time asylum horror movies. You know, where the ghost would kinda flicker in and out of sight getting closer each time. As they grew closer, we started seeing them for what they were. They were more like aliens than anything else. Like the typical image of an alien. Tall, lanky, but they were all dark and shadowy. I think they made it within about 10 feet of us before they started drifting back toward the tree line. I don't know what the reasoning was, whether they determined that we were not a threat to them, whether they weren't there to cause harm, or whether they just couldn't be bothered with us. Who knows? Anyway, Larry said that these things, they were called Quinkins. He said his parents would always tell him stories about them. The creepiest thing about the Quinkin is no one really knows what they are or what they're about. There's a ton of different theories from different tribes in different parts of the country, but no real answer on what they are. Best guess Larry can come up with is that there's some sort of spirit projection or lost soul trapped here between worlds. Why are they trapped? Why are they not allowed to enter the next world? Well, being 10 foot away from the bloody things, that's the question that still haunts me today. Weird sightings at Alligator Creek. And I don't mean the alligators. There are none. I don't know why they call it Alligator Creek. We don't even have alligators in Australia. Anyways, listen. This is a short one, but creepy as hell nonetheless. My family and I, we live around the bushland beach area. We often take day trips out to Alligator Creek in the warmer months. It's a nice swimming spot, great to cool off in the summer. So, my brother and I, we're doing what we normally do, just kind of floating around in our tire tubes and chatting, just staring up at the sky and letting our minds drift. I guess our minds were not the only thing drifting, as when we looked up, I didn't recognize anything around us. Sure, the surroundings were the same. It's all bushland and rocks. But the familiar landmarks and geography, they were completely gone. We had drifted, I don't even know how far downstream, and we were freaking out. Not because we didn't know the way back or anything, obviously just follow the water back up, but because it was getting close to sunset. And just because there's no gators in this creek doesn't mean there's no dangers out here in the bush. Snakes, dingoes, heck, you never know when you might encounter a salty. We had no clue how far downstream we'd gone. So, first things first, we got ourselves out of the water just in case. We strolled a little ways from the water's edge into the bushland, and we began to follow the river upstream. It got real dark, real quick. Not pitch black dark, just like edge of dusk kind of dark. Not that this was any less worrying. The sun would soon be gone, and we'd be out here alone. We needed to keep sight of the river to know which direction was the right way. We decided to pick up the pace. We kind of howl walking along, and I feel a tapping on my back. I turn around, and it's my brother. He's looking absolutely terrified and pointing into the bush, deeper in where the trees and scrub gets thicker. I had no idea what he was on about, so I was about to brush him off and keep going, when I saw it. At first I thought it might be one of our parents or their friends come looking for us. But it was tall. Like really tall. Taller than any person should be. And it was dark. As we stared at this thing, it slowly raised an arm and kind of waved it in front of it, like pointing at us and waving its arm up and down. I've no idea why, but it was freaky. We were just fixated on this thing, unable to look away. And then it ran towards us. The speed this thing was coming at us was not human, not in any way. It was kind of floating towards us. It just was not right. Anyway, we take off, absolutely flooring it upstream. No care to watch out for snakes or whatever else anymore. All we wanted to do was get back to our parents. And eventually, we caught sight of them. Finally. We practically fell back into the clearing when we got there. Panting, exhausted. Our parents asked what was going on and why we were playing games with them. They were angry, saying something like, "It's the 5th time they've asked us to come out of there." We were genuinely confused. We asked them what they were talking about. They said they heard us, calling out to them, telling them to come into the bush and play hide and seek with us. We had done nothing of the sort. We never yelled out to them or anything on our way back. But obviously, something had. My mate Nathan and I, we used to go camping in his backyard. You know, just the kind of things kids do. Too young to go real camping apparently. But our parents said that we could pitch a tent in the yard and have a little fire and we could pretend that we were out in the bush having an adventure. So, that's what we would do. Every weekend, I'd pack up my swag, load up with junk food, and head over to Nathan's place. Those trips were so much fun. We were going nowhere, but as kids, it felt like we were. We would even position our tents facing toward the trees in his back paddock, so it felt like we really were out there in the great outdoors. It was amazing. Until one night put an end to our little excursions. It was right on sunset when we first saw it. Barely visible at first, and the source of a little joke between the two of us. "The trees are alive. They're coming to get us," we joked around with each other. Until the tree really did start moving towards us. It was almost impossible to discern right away, but both of us could swear that this singular tree was somehow breaking off from the rest of them and floating towards us. After a little while of this, we started freaking each other out a bit. So we turned away and we just sat around the fire, drinking our soft drinks and roasting some marshmallows. We were having a pretty good time laughing and joking as usual. Until Nathan, out of nowhere, got up and practically sprinted to the tent. I was a bit confused and I thought he must have just been messing around and doing whatever, playing a practical joke or, I don't know, something. So, I get up and I run in there too. I ask him what the hell he's doing, but he's literally hiding under his blanket at this point. I grab his shoulder and shake him and demand what's going on. He just squeaked out at me, "Look at the trees." I did look at the trees, and what I saw made me jump under the covers myself. It was halfway across the paddock now, coming towards us. It was no tree, that's for sure. By now, we could clearly make out features. Long, spindly legs, kind of drifting, almost dragging beneath it, if that's possible. As dumb as this sounds, it was like one of those inflatable tube guys with the flailing arms and legs. Not quite as animated as that, but so you kind of get an idea of the way this thing moved. It wasn't normal. We sat there, in the tent, praying that whatever this thing was would turn around and go away. And then we heard the noises. Unnatural sounds, clearly coming from this thing. It was like a deep, gobbling sound, like a turkey would make, but it didn't sound right. We put our heads under the covers now too. We didn't want to see this thing. But the noises, they got louder and louder, and were clearly coming closer. That was it. We decided to make a run for it. We barely even unzipped the tent and just jumped through the little gap and legged it. As we ran, I caught sight out of the corner of my eye. This thing. I swear to God, it was not even 5 meters from our tent as we ran away. I still get shivers thinking about it. We ran inside the house screaming about what we'd seen. Nathan's dad was up having some beers with his mate. They both laughed, and Dad's friend said to us, "Quentin gonna get ya." We had no idea what that meant. Being older now, and having researched Quinkins a little, that could very well be what we saw. I'm not sure if what I saw was any kind of cryptid or ghost, but what I do know is that it was not normal or natural in any way. Whether it was a figment of my overtired mind or something very real, I guess I'll never know for sure. It was early 2000 sometime, I guess around 02 or 03. I was catching the train from Richmond out to Mount Isa to visit my dad. The train comes through very late at night, so by the time I got on it, it was already too dark to see any scenery. So I pretty much went straight to sleep. I was awoken around 2 a.m. in the morning as we stopped at Julia Creek Station. Tired and cranky, I almost ignored the light tapping sound on the window next to me. Almost. I thought it might be an attendant needing my attention, so I pulled the blinds open and I looked out. Nothing. No one was there. Annoyed, thinking it was some kid tapping and running away, I pulled the blinds back closed and I went back to sleep. It wasn't until about 3 hours later that the tapping noise returned and really unsettled me. As the train flew down the tracks at speed. This could not be happening. I slowly rolled up the blinds and looked out. Nothing. Well, at first I didn't see anything. You know how, as a kid, you would occasionally look out the window of the car and imagine that little guy running alongside? That's kind of what I saw. But not fun, and not cute at all. What I saw As I stared out that window, were dark figures, disappearing behind trees, reappearing on the other side, kind of flashing in and out of the tree line, but dashing ahead, keeping pace with the train, staring specifically at me, it seemed. I don't remember much else. I remember being terrified. I remember wondering what would happen. Could they get inside? Would they be waiting for me at my final stop? Why were they tapping on the glass? I would never learn the answers to any of those questions. As the sun rose higher and higher, these figures, they faded from existence. When I finally reached my stop, I got straight out of the train and straight into a cab, going directly to my dad's place. For the first day or two, I said nothing about what happened, before finally deciding to bring it up. My dad didn't say much, and he didn't mention any specific names of ghosts or creatures or whatever. He simply said that this ancient land that we make our lives on, it commands respect. Sometimes the secrets of this land will make themselves known to us. Other times, the questions are better left unanswered. He hugged me tight, and he told me that he was glad I was safe.